pretty brief period. We're talking between, I think, 1966 and 1973, roughly, is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I don't know, tell us a little bit about what you were watching, what you were listening to, how your work was evolving at that time. What is it like for you to look at these films now, today?
I forgot the whole thing. Sorry. I started taking photographs in about 1960 and was working as an amateur rather seriously for several years. I began to make films in '65, and the whole process of photographic technology turned out to be very easy for me to do. So I could make all the technical stuff work very well, which was good. So when I moved from photography into film, it was the same. I could do right things, expose, compose, etc. So that was good. I was working, I was seeing a lot of experimental things, experimental film as well in that period. Going to a lot of galleries, first seeing a lot of art.
Did you have contact with any of the experimental filmmakers working in New York at that time?
Yeah, a bit, but not intensely. I didn't really go looking for the people that much.
Okay. Your collaboration, because you do collaborate, it seems, on a lot of your work, although I don't know if at this stage.
I collaborated in some ways on a lot of the film stuff, much more than the photographic stuff.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I shot a lot of jazz musicians in the very early days.
Right.
And that was an element. I went to New York in '58 because I was a jazz fan, and so I was interested to go and see and hear that sort of stuff.
Right.
I worked with a group of experimental actors called the Open Theater. So the first film was that. Yeah, that's right. So the last guy in the film was Joe Chaikin, who was the leader of that group. And Lee Worley was the woman in the first and the last scenes, who was a major actor, who went then to Naropa and made some contact recently.
Now, the final piece here, 10-100-inch radii, was actually part of if I understand it correctly, it was part of a series of installations, multimedia installations that you could call environments. Is that right?
They were actually concert performances.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the nature of those original performance pieces. And I know that they're quite a bit different. They looked quite a lot different than what we just looked and sounded different than what we just saw. I mean, you had, from what I understand, there were multiple screens. There were live performances. What were the conditions of the?
I built a really big screen, 36 feet wide, with 3 9x12 images. And made it actually a portable screen, so I could take it anywhere and build it up very quickly, and project 16mm film, 3 16mm projections on that. So those pieces were generally with live dance elements and music and multiple image. And part of the problem was that it was too complex to do. So there were 5 of us in the company, 2 dancers and 3 technician people, including me. But
Wait, was it electronic music? Live?
No.
So it was scored.
I never really made electronic music.
Right. This piece. So this piece that we heard with THIR, the last piece here, the soundtrack is not the original soundtrack, actually. And I had express instructions not to use the original soundtrack from.
Yeah. Can't stand it myself.
It gives him the creepy crawlies. Those are your words.
In fact, I can't find documentation of that piece. I can't find the score or any other tape material from a 43-minute piece of that nature. And I cut the titles off the film when I transferred it to video, and I would have to go back to the film. The cans of film are sitting at home, but I'd have to go back to the film and look at it to find out exactly what it says the piece was. So, and the piece which I used was a piece from 2007 or 8, which I like very much. It was been used on 3 different projects.
One Large Rose, it's called.
One Large Rose. It's actually the middle orchestra of a 3 orchestra piece, which is scored.
Right.
And we extended the time from 23 minutes to 46 minutes. And we were in a church in Hamburg. 4 guys were playing, the violin, cello, the piano played with a nylon string attached to the piano string and then pulled with Russian fingers. And an acoustic guitar bass played part of the time with an ebow and part of the time also with a nylon string.
Right. Terrific.
So we made 4 passes in 2 nights, from about midnight until sometime earlier.
Well, how would you describe the relationship of this stuff that we just saw to later work, particularly the film work? I mean, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 25-year project that is the movement of people working. Many of you, if you were there on Friday night, these are films literally shot in 60mm of people doing manual labor mostly. And so I'm wondering if you have ideas about how you got from here to there.
Oh, very
Or actually even how you got
concrete
there.
ideas, because it was too complex to do these things.
Yeah.
So I needed to find some material I could use as visual material, but I was still interested in making this kind of visual material and film, which was much more portable. So then I just, and I also was getting very tired of dance and dancers. So I decided to do this very natural stuff of people moving while they're working and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I thought that would probably take 3 years, and it took 18. Yeah.
Questions?
What is it that you like about shooting on 16mm, and what is your relationship like with other film formats?
I did start shooting video in 1990 and 91, something like that. High 8, which still looks fairly horrible, I think. And so 16mm, and I was very much interested in the image quality of film. I mean, I really started as a still photographer, and I was extremely interested in the kind of resolution and the stuff you could get with. Did that answer the question? I couldn't afford 35. I couldn't have carried it. When I worked in the field, entirely myself, so I carried a big bag with an Aeroflex and 50 rolls of film, and some part of that time also a bag with 3 Nikons and 5 lenses, and so I was rather weighted down, and a quite nice tripod. And I worked alone, so I would travel with someone who spoke the language or some approximation. I traveled a lot, 3 times in China, where there are 200 dialects, and so one person that would speak Central Chinese could speak one dialect. And most people could understand some Central Chinese, even in very small villages away. I was in one village where I think I was probably the first white guy walking through the halls. And there was a huge row of stools, which was the toilets. And as I walked past, there was a woman sitting on the toilet, and she was really shocked to see me. I was shocked to see her. There was a fantastic hole in the, with a large stone with a hole, and the hole had these incredible rope markings where for 100 years, they put ropes down with a bucket to get water to the village. But every house had a color TV set and electricity. So they were watching TV.
How long would you spend in the field for a given film?
Usually 3 or 4 weeks a year. And I travel once or twice, most of the time twice, but sometimes more.
To a given place?
To a different place,
Right.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And I was teaching at the time, so I mean, I would travel in January and the summer.
Right. Other questions?
Well, I feel bad about asking that because you said you can tire dancers, but could you talk more about your collaborations with dancers? I also saw this wonderful film you made for Ivan Reiner, Fred, and the little girl that looks in the perspective as it's fitting with you. You work with Ellen Summers, you work with Dana Rex, you work with...
I don't remember that film with Elaine, or with Yvonne. I recently made contact with that dinner with Yvonne about a few months ago.
But I swear to you, I saw it.
Yeah. I only remember the one where people had balls
Yeah.
and we were tossing them.
No, but there was one where
That
there
was
was it looks like a pearl on a string, but because of the perspective, it also looks like a big ball. And it's a process.
Can you find it? I don't think I
No,
remember
I
that
don't
film.
have it, of course.
Okay.
But could you talk about your collaborations with other dancers?
Well, I shot a lot of stuff with a lot of different choreographers during that period from 65 to 70, and then I stopped. Elaine Summers, particularly, who I began working in film with, and then Yvonne and Meredith Munger, and quite a number of people.
And Dana Rex? Dana Rex?
Yes. Not so much as a dancer, actually.
As a subject.
Well, when I began to shoot this series of films of people working, there was one film called Four Libras, and she was one of the 4 Libras. I'm a Libra.
What became of Raoul Middleman?
Oh, he's still alive and well. In fact, that shot where he's painting himself in the mirror was the very first shot that we took.
Okay.
And I recently cut that out and made a loop for him to show in a gallery show in Baltimore. He's still painting there.
Is he still painting in the same studio?
No, that studio was actually in the same building where I have lived for 48 years. So, and he left after 1 year, so he was there for a short time. Yep.
In the description for tonight's event, it talks about a lot of your sound as architectural or environmental. And I was just wondering if your ideas about sound when you compose, if you're thinking visually or if you're thinking spatially, or if your influence as a filmmaker or a photographer was before you started working with sound, and if that's why you think so spatially and visually.
I think there's virtually no relationship between what I do with music and what I do with film. I had this idea in '68 to make very long-tone music using a lot of microtones to produce a lot of variation in harmonics. And I started making music with instruments, acoustic instruments. I did a lot of the film work from the movie we were working very close up, so there would be shots of people, and I was 5 feet away, so I was not particularly using a macro lens. In fact, most of the stuff was shot with the 12-20 Engineer, which was such a perfect lens. So. And I had I found on 32nd Street photo store the 1954 Airflex S which was the 514th. It was the first year of production, so the 514th RAS, which had belonged to a union, and it had been stripped of everything except one lens. There was no motor, no nothing. And it was $700, and I put a deposit on it quick. And some German filmmaker came a week later and asked me if I would sell it to him for $1,000. So I didn't do it. And it was a really great camera, I mean, I must say. The Aeroflexes actually got worse after that because they kept making a much more complex optical system for viewing. And this one was very simple and was a super camera. It was a great camera to work with all these years. And I had a 12-120 which belonged originally to the Coast Guard because I had a student who was not really a student but who was in the Coast Guard. And he went down to Washington one weekend and he came back with this 12-120 and a motor for the camera. I'm sure they never missed it, and I certainly enjoyed it very much.
I guess I'll extend from where we were talking a moment ago, from questions regarding sound, your sound and your film. So if you think they're separate, though, when do you find a point where like a musical piece of yours is the right piece to accompany a film piece of yours? For example, on the last one tonight, although you took a piece that you had written separately and applied it to this film, but are you able to articulate what it was about this piece of music that worked for that film for you, or that you knew it was at a point that it could work?
It's a very simple answer. The film, which actually I cut from the 3 hours of material that I shot for that particular project, which was the fourth of these environment series, which will be, I think that was first shown at the Everson Museum in Syracuse, but the one before was shown in the Whitney Museum. I cut a film. It was 43 minutes, and I had a track for it, and I simply don't know anything about that track. And, but I have relatively few pieces which are that long. I like this piece very much that's on the track, which was 46 minutes. And so we simply cut 3 minutes out. And that's the answer.
But Phil, there was a time at least when you were showing films and music as a live performance. The film would stop and the music would continue, and then another film would start, and then the music would stop in about 1/3 after the film had started. There would be another piece. So there was this constant out of sync quality to the performance, which to me forced people to think about that relationship as being not something obvious and not something, and also something generated by chance, because that also depended on when the tape would start and the projector, how fast the projector would run. And, so this is a little different because you match the two together, which you usually, I mean, in live performances you don't do.
Well, yes and no. They are matched together, but not necessarily by my choice. It's a single screen film with a track. So,
what do you mean it's not your choice? You are forced
to make a release of a single channel film with a track or a DVD. I mean, if I'm the concert that I did on Friday at Human Resources, which had 3 films running, and in the end 4 pieces of music. all of which were timbrally quite different from each other, is relatively a perfect way for me to work. I had another show last night at CalArts with 10 saxophone players. You can imagine 8 baritone saxophone players walking around the space. It was really amazing. But I could only show one film, so that, for me, that was hard to do.
And yet on your show at Human Resources on Friday night, actually the music stopped well before the images. And the images seemed, as a matter of fact, the images continued, and then you played an encore.
Yes.
Without ever stopping the images, actually.
I do that very often, and in one concert I can remember, the music stopped after about an hour and a half, and the film ran for 45 minutes, and nobody moved.
Did you want them to?
Nope. Whatever they wanted.
Okay, I think, unless anybody has a last question?
Yeah, let's go have a drink.
Let's thank Phill for coming out tonight.